Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Amy. And thank you all for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I see there's folks from all over the world. I'm glad you were able to join today. My name is Eric Naiburg, as Amy said, and I'm here. I saw there was someone from New Jersey. I saw some folks from Pennsylvania. I'm here in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, about an hour and 20 minutes from New York City, about an hour and 20 minutes from Philadelphia, depending on traffic. We're going to talk a bit today about, should a project manager become a Scrum Master? And it's a question I often get. We used to do a lot of conferences in person where we really had opportunities to talk to folks. Haven't done that in a while. And this question first started to come up when I was actually up in Toronto at one of the PMBA conferences, and a bunch of people came over and we were talking, and they were saying, hey, our team is going agile. Does that mean I'm now a Scrum Master? And which led to me writing some articles about this in this presentation that we'll go through today. Just briefly, who am I? So I run marketing operations here at Scrum.org. I've written a few books, UML for Mere Mortals, UML for Database Design. I've spent the last 30 or so years working primarily in software development process, but really in process improvement. Primarily in roles around product management and product ownership. You can see me there. I also spend some time behind the plate, and often I tell stories that relate to all of that. So I like to throw that up there. And I saw there were some folks from Massachusetts and Canada. Oh, I see a yay Poconos, a yay Toronto. Those of you from Montreal, or those of you from the Boston area, may recognize this guy here. Second in from the left, that's Oil Can Boyd, and he's an all-star pitcher for the Montreal Expos and for the Boston Red Sox, and pitched in the '86 World Series, where my Mets beat him. But I had the liberty to catch him in there as well. So a little claim to fame in that tournament that I played in. Anyhow, let's get started. So just briefly, who is Scrum.org? Scrum.org is founded by Ken Schwaber. Ken is the co-creator of Scrum, founder and chairman of Scrum.org, my boss. And Ken continues to help lead our organization in really leading with a focus of helping people and teams solve complex problems. That's our mission. Everything we do, we always ask that question: are we helping people and teams solve complex problems? We do that through thought leadership, things like this webinar, training, certification, and ongoing learning, and building out new content along the way. We do it in a consistent way. All of our trainers teaching the same content, same material, 345, I believe, of them all over the world, in building out that community. So just kind of wanted to let you know a little bit about who I am, what I do, where I work. And now let's get on with, well, I'm a project manager. Does that mean I become a Scrum Master? To get started, I felt it would be great to kind of give us a introduction to what is Scrum, to make sure we're all kind of level set and have the same thought process. So we'll go very quickly, hopefully, through this and get going. And the move to Agile has been something, or part of something much bigger. We've had lots of things have happened over the years, right? The Industrial Revolution, steam and railways, mass production, and then the age of software and digital that most of us have grown up in over the years. And those have really driven the need to be more agile, the need to reflect, the need to go from we do it this way and we always do it this way and we're constantly doing it this way, to, okay, we need to inspect and adapt how we work. We need to think about the way we're working. A lot of the things that actually happened in the early 90s in mass production of automobiles, as they evolved in thinking the Toyota way and how Toyota worked and other things, got us to thinking we can always improve. And we should be looking for ways to improve, and constant improvement, constant inspection, constant adaptation, to get us really thinking to, okay, what do we need to do and how can we keep getting better? And what that drove is in the early 90s, in 1995, Ken Schwaber, the gentleman I mentioned earlier, um, created a paper and then a presentation that he did at an event called OOPSLA, the Object Oriented Process something event in 1995. And what he presented there was Scrum, which looked very similar to what it looks like today. Scrum is made up of a team. You've got a team of people who have accountabilities, product owners, Scrum Master, and developers. A set of artifacts, a product backlog, a sprint backlog in an increment, something we're going to deliver. That product can be anything. It could be anything from a data sheet or a press release to this cup or some software or the like, and a set of events to help us constantly inspect and adapt and reflect. Sprint planning, daily Scrum, a sprint review, and a sprint retrospective. So just briefly kind of take you through what those are. A Scrum team, they must have all of the skills needed to deliver a done increment. Ideally, more than one team member has the same competency, so that we have the member of the team or members of the team working together to deliver something. And hopefully we have the ability as a team to be cross-functional. So we all have different skills, but we also have overlapping skills, because you never know when somebody's going to be out sick or on vacation or the like. That Scrum team, as I said, is made up of a set of accountabilities, product owner, developers, and Scrum Masters. That team is generally 10 people or less. And the idea being, if we start getting too big, it becomes very hard to work together, very hard to communicate. We start running into each other and having dependencies against each other. And it becomes much easier to split into multiple teams that are working together rather than one very large team, which becomes difficult to manage. The product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of the product. The developers create that product, and the Scrum Master helps promote and support Scrum, support the team, and they really serve the team as a leader, but really serving the team to help the team get better. And as part of their accountabilities, that Scrum Master is a mentor, they're a coach, they're a trainer, they're a teacher, they're a facilitator. They are not the scheduler, they are not the admin for the team, they are not the reporter for the team. They're really there to support the team, but facilitate how the team works. So help them solve problems, not necessarily solve the problems for them, but help them come up with ways. As a Scrum team is self-managing, help them come up with ways to better manage themselves and improve how they work. And that makes the Scrum team. So, project manager and the Scrum Master. Hopefully that gave us a quick little overview there. Project manager, and I pulled this from Wikipedia just to kind of level set a little bit. They run the project and they're responsible for its delivery. Project managers have the responsibility of the planning, procurement, and execution of the project. Something really important here, that second bullet, the individual seldom participates directly in the activities that produce the end result, but they strive to maintain the progress. When we think about that compared to the Scrum Master, they guide, they help, they facilitate, they help everyone understand the process and the theory behind it. They provide guidance to the team. They're accountable for the Scrum team's effectiveness by enabling how they work and supporting those teams. They do not manage the project or delivery status reports. Those duties that people associate often with the role of the project manager. They don't drive the team by giving tasks. The team is self-managing. So hopefully, and you just kind of go back to that real quick, you can see some differences here. You can see why these roles are definitely very different. It doesn't mean that as your team or as your organization is moving to agile and adopting Scrum, that you as a project manager, for example, may not become a Scrum Master, but it's not an instant, oh, we're just going to change your title or change your accountabilities and you're done. There's a series of thoughts that have to go into this. And what is the right role for you based on your skills, based on your abilities, based on your knowledge, based on the desires and the goals of the team and the organization as well. So let's compare and contrast these a little bit. The Scrum Master and the Scrum team, there's a whole team accountable for delivery. There's incremental scope. We're delivering little pieces at a time. The Scrum Master is part of the team, and they hold and they're being held accountable as part of that team. They coach the team members to be self-managing, and they're leaders who serve. They serve that Scrum team, which is very important. Looking at the project manager in a traditional team, they're responsible for project management, for project scope. They seldom participate directly. Their tasks are from various parties on what work to do, and they that should be task, not tasks. It's a typo by me. Sorry. They task various parties on what work they should be doing, and they're assigning work at times, and they escalate issues to higher authorities that rather than facilitating the team to help better solve those problems. They get very, very different mindset, very different ways of working. And one being a real integral part of the team versus oversight, if you will, of the team. The Scrum Master, there are many misunderstood stances of a Scrum Master in different traits, and then I'll talk about some of the actual traits. The Scrum Master is responsible for doing burn down charts or creating user stories. They're the Scrum police or the scribe or the chairman. They make all the decisions, and then they report to everybody, and they decide on who we hire and fire, and they're only focused on the team. That's not true. That's not the case. That is not the role of the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is there to help support the team and to support Scrum. Scrum is based on the pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation, which help build trust. You can see here in the upper left of the screen, there are 5 values in Scrum: courage, focus, commitment, respect, and openness. And those values are quite important for how the team works and how the team works together and thinks. The Scrum Master is responsible for Scrum and the Scrum team. They're responsible for helping everybody focus at all levels across the organization, not just the Scrum team, but working across the organization. They also often protect the team from outside influences or disruptions. Again, keeping that focus. The Scrum Master is a teacher, a coach, an impediment remover. They're a change agent, a mentor, a facilitator. They play many, many roles, or they take many stances as part of that team. And they're a true leader. They're serving others, not themselves. They facilitate conflict and help to resolve it, but they don't solve it on their own. They lead by example. They try not to solve problems. They try to help people decide and figure out how to solve problems. They have to read the room, of course, and create an environment that's safe. Really a true leader. So the big question, should a project manager become a Scrum Master? And I hate to give this answer, but it depends. It really does depend. It depends on many, many things. So some questions that you should start to ask, and questions to ask yourself as you're thinking about this. What is it that I like to do? What don't I like to do? How do I like to participate as a team member or not? Can I coach people rather than telling them? This is a tough one for people. It's a very different approach. We've been having a lot of conversations lately about the difference between a coach and a manager, for example. If I look at certain things, like I look at our test questions as an example, I look at different ways that people act and people talk, I see this come out a lot. If you ask the question, so two team members are having a problem and they're not getting along, what should we do? As a Scrum Master, your answer is never tell them blah, blah, blah. It's start to have that conversation and coach them into ways of resolving that conflict. Now, there might be an instance where they can't resolve the conflict themselves, but you need to try. You need to be able to step away from the conflict and away from the people and help them resolve the problem. Or they're trying to understand the best ways to solve any kind of problem. You could tell them, well, here's what I would do. Or you could ask. So then what? What would you do next? How do you work? How do you think we could best solve this problem? What have you talked to others about? And so on. Really coaching them to solve problems on their own, helping them by facilitating their work and their thinking. Are you willing to share responsibilities and trust the team? That's an important question to ask. Can I trust others? Can I trust the team and look at us as a team rather than just my responsibilities, my accountabilities, my goals? We're a team, and how are we working together as a team? Do I want to own something? Do I like to motivate? In what ways do I like to motivate? How do I motivate people? And what are some of the ways that I motivate people? These are really important questions to start to ask yourself when you're making that decision from a career perspective of, well, what's next? Because there are many, many options. Project management, for example, does not go away in Scrum, or doesn't have to. There are organizational constructs where the PMO still exists and helps support those Scrum teams and helps support the Scrum Master and still reports up status and the like. It doesn't have to go away, number one. Or there are other roles. Maybe you'd be better as a project manager moving into a product owner role, or moving into a development team member, or a developer on the team. It doesn't mean you have to move into that Scrum Master, but there's this myth, this misconception. It's these conversations I always have with people. Oh, well, Scrum Master is just the project manager for the team. And that's not the case. It's not about reporting status. It's not about managing status. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about motivating people, and people are motivated in many, many different ways. It's about helping the team and facilitating the team and working together with the team. Manuela asks, using Scrum is not a personal decision. It is a first and foremost an organizational decision. Not always the case. It's certainly not a personal decision, but it's often not an organizational decision. A lot of times it depends on, I guess, how you define organization, but often many times Scrum is adopted at the team level and rolls up, not always down. But yes, there are many times that the organization or part of the organization says we're going to start using Scrum. That's okay. Again, it doesn't mean that your role all of a sudden becomes Scrum Master. Have those conversations. Help the decision makers understand what it means and what would be the best role for you. Now, you may be forced into that. Maybe they say you're the project manager. Now you're a Scrum Master. That's okay. But then look at these things. Start looking at the differences. Start looking at how you need to change and evolve your way of working and your way of thinking. Because without that, the team is not going to be successful, and you, in turn, very likely won't be successful. So they may not be setting you up to succeed, but you need to take advantage of that and drive towards success. So there are a couple other questions. Just couple other questions came up. Annie, who does the escalation within a Scrum team if it's not the Scrum Master? Escalation to whom, I guess, is the question I would ask. The Scrum team is self-dependent in solving problems. Now, if they need to go to management for clarity, that depends. Depends on what they're looking for. It depends on what they're trying to escalate and how they're trying to escalate. The Scrum Master is not the manager of the team. So what are we escalating? Is it not understanding a requirement? Well, the product owner should very likely be working through that. Is it a problem with an employee? Well, we should try to solve it within the team first. So there's a lot of ways that can be answered. So I don't know the exact situation. Well, if you have some other ideas, please let me know. In Manish, in the real world, often job responsibilities are mixed. They expect Scrum Master to be a business analyst or a project manager. It fails the purpose of the job. How do you deal with this mix-up? First, getting clarity on what it is we're trying to achieve and what it is that the team is trying to achieve, and making sure that that's clear up and down the flagpole, if you will. We've actually run in a lot of organizations, taking leaders through Scrum training so they understand how the team works and the roles and responsibilities of the team. Being very clear in that and driving that and changing the mindset. One of the biggest failures that I see in agile, if you will, is the fact that often people don't want to change or don't know how to change, especially leaders, management. And they just want to keep doing things the same way they always have. And we run a lot of exercises, and that's the role of the Scrum Master, is to run those exercises to help drive change in mindset, change in the way people think, to really understand that. If the Scrum Master is not driving that change in thought, then we probably will end up failing. So I'm going to keep going, and then we'll take some more questions. There's a bunch more coming in. Thank you. Just want to be a little conscious of time as well, make sure we hit both sides. So self-management must extend to everyone. And that includes the stakeholders, those folks we were talking about in Manisha's question. Mutual respect, shared values and goals, commitments, interdependence, working agreements, and the like. And that's the product owner, that's the Scrum Master, that's the development team members, as well as the stakeholders, and all together. That respect, that understanding, those shared values and goals need to be in place. There's a great case study out on the Scrum.org website. If you just did a search on intralinks, INTRALINKS, you should be able to find it. And it's called the Scrum Reboot. What happened was, and this is very similar to, I think, part of that question, they decided to be agile and do Scrum. And they did what we would call, or I would call, mechanical Scrum. Yep, they had all the meetings, they had all of the roles, they went through everything, but they didn't really live it. They didn't breathe it. They didn't understand what they were doing and why. Remember, Scrum is an empirical process. It's about constantly inspecting and adapting what we do and improving how we do it. They missed all of that. And what they really found on inspection is they were missing the Scrum values. They weren't really living and breathing those values of respect, commitment, and the like. They were just going through the motions. And they did what they called a reboot. In this case study, this paper that they did on themselves, really looked at that. And what they realized was, by changing and starting to live the values, getting respect amongst the team, committing to each other, having focus and the like, they now were able to function as a Scrum team. They were able to work more closely and better with their stakeholders. They were able to work better as a team. And check out the case study. It's a really good retrospective of how they changed and what they did to improve. Leaders make the difference. Leaders help steer toward shared goals. Not, oh, I get my bonus based on my work, but shared goals. Leaders make it safe for change, and leaders model the change. And again, this is to me very, very important in how we work, how we think, and getting that support. As a Scrum Master, I need to get leaders to think this way and support us as a team. My job as a Scrum Master is not just to coach the team, but to coach leaders, to coach management, to help them. And then as a Scrum Master in the team to do this as well as a leader within that team. So a couple other questions are coming in. Wayne asks, can I coach people rather than telling them? Answer, Scrum Master, collaborative conversation as a team member. So you're answering your question as well. Awesome. Let me see here if I can get to the punchline. Am I willing to share responsibilities as a team? If you can let go from controlling and managing a project, learn to collaborate and be the voice as part of a team, Scrum could be good for you. Yeah, I think you nailed it, Wayne. There wasn't really a question there. It was, I think, a great observation or based on some great experience. Jennifer, it was interesting that you said that a project manager is still needed in some teams. Do you see project management disappear in Agile? If so, what role picks up the statusing, etc.? I'm an Agile novice. So I see many organizations who still have, like I said, a PMO or project management, either above the teams working almost as a service. I talk about it as a service to the team where they may or may not be on the team. They may have someone on a developer, right? Developer is a generic term for people who are working to deliver the increment. Those people may be on the team, or they may be a service to the team. And often those skills still remain and are needed. The other thing that we do in Agile and in Scrum is we work through transparency. So we make the product backlog transparent. So anybody can see status at any time. And we provide that openness in those reports, and we can automate that. We invite our stakeholders to sprint reviews. So it's not a project manager telling everybody what's happened, but they come to the sprint reviews and they give feedback, and we do demos, and we provide information to help get that feedback. So it's not just looking at status, but it's really looking at what we've delivered. One of the things I've witnessed over the years is what often happens in project management is we get a slant on things. We see that it's whatever the project manager tells the executives is what they see versus them actually witnessing it themselves. And by inviting people to a sprint review and having a sprint review be a true, honest, and open discussion, one of the things you have to be very cautious of in a sprint review is, I know that they use words like demonstration because you have to show something, you show what's been delivered during that sprint, but it's not a demo. And what I mean by that is we're really working to get feedback. Often when you say the word demo, you think I'm going into sales mode and I'm going to sell people on how great what I just did is. It's not that. It's really maybe even letting them touch it and use whatever it is that product is. But if not, when you're demonstrating it, really asking and looking for feedback, not being afraid to show gaps. As a matter of fact, in a really good sprint review, you will show things that you're looking for feedback. Hey, I implemented this sprint, but I'm not convinced that I did it the way that customers or users would want. What do you think? And asking those probing questions and starting to get to really engage them. So providing that transparency all of the time, rather than just here's a roll-up status, because it's meaningless. One of the worst things that I've heard in the world of Agile and Scrum is things like, twice the work in half the time, increased velocity. Who cares? If I create bad stuff, if I create garbage, if I create things that aren't usable, if I create things that give me a lot of technical debt where I can't maintain it long term, who cares how fast it was created? Who cares that I created it twice as fast? That's not what's important. What's important is the value, and starting to look at measuring value delivered, value to our customers or our users, value to our organization, and really looking at the value that's delivered. Never, please never, and I see when we take a project management mentality, sometimes we get into this. We start comparing teams based on velocity. And even using teams as a weapon, velocity as a weapon, and that's a horrible thing to do for a couple of reasons. One is it's easy to cheat. If I'm using story points, for example, something that normally would have been a 3 is now a 5. Great, we just increased our velocity by twofold. Well, no, not really. I just changed what it is because there's not. What velocity is a way for me as a team to predict. It's not a way to compare. And if I start comparing two teams, now I've lost the ability for them to really be honest within their team and trust their team and really scope, because velocity really is a way of scoping ourselves and scoping how we work. We can look, all this is generally good. Curious to know how progress reports are generated, burn downs. As a resource, dollars is being spent, someone is going to look for that. Absolutely. And again, our tools can do that. Our tools can produce those reports. We could have, the development team, we could rotate that. It doesn't matter how we produce those reports. If we're using something like Jira or version 1 or Rally or whatever your tool of choice is, we can create those burn down charts. It doesn't mean it has to be the Scrum Master's job. It doesn't mean you have to have a project manager to do it. It's a button. Or we can automate it. I've been on teams where we automate it, and there's a dashboard that we've created that's automated to create those burn down charts and describe that. Marcia says, who gets more pay and more workplace respect? I have no idea. Depends on the organization. It depends on how people are incentivized. I've seen some HR organizations, Capital One in the UK, for example, I met their head of HR, and she was working on a project when I met her to level the playing field and start bonusing and compensating people based on teamwork and not individual work, because we're all accountable. And it gets us to start working together better as a team and driving each other and having each other working together. So I'm not sure there's a clear answer to that. And it's really going to depend on how that organization functions and is structured. And if done right and done well, it's not going to matter. It's about working together and really being a team. Christine, can a PM be both a PM and a Scrum Master? If not, why? Is it time or just structure? I guess I'm having a hard time imagining how a Scrum Master would fill their day. Great question. A Scrum Master, could they be a project manager as well? Nothing says they can't, but that's going to give you very different behaviors if you're the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master fills their day, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can fill your day helping the team, or you may be a Scrum Master for more than one team. There's nothing that says a Scrum Master has to be a Scrum Master for only one team. Often what you'll see is there's a new team spinning up. That's a very full-time job. As they become more self-sufficient, the Scrum Master may take on a second team. But the role of the Scrum Master is certainly different than the role of the project manager. And if you start going from helping people to succeed to telling people they need to succeed, how do you change that hat? How do you change that mindset? How do you change on the fly? How does the development team, how do developers know which hat you're wearing at that time? And often what I've seen is if you're trying to change that mindset in midstream, you end up confusing the team and losing the trust of the team, because now they just think you're the, just isn't a fair word, but they think you're a project manager and you're worried about status and you're not worried about helping them and you as a whole to be successful. So keep going here. So, and then this kind of ties to some of what we're talking about. Drive, if you haven't read it, it's a great book by Daniel Pink, and it talks about what motivates people. And it's not just money. Yes, money is certainly important. We have to put food on the table. We have to pay our mortgages. We have to send our children to college. But we want to feel fulfilled as a whole. Not everybody's the same. But people want to feel fulfilled. They want if-then rewards. They want to feel like they've delivered something. They want to feel like they're adding value. They also want long-term productivity. Not just feel like I'm doing something now, but are we really headed toward a goal? And we delivering and driving toward that goal? So it's about influence, it's about power, it's about money, it's all of those things, not just one. I know I've taken jobs where I've taken pay cuts because the other pieces, those intrinsic motivations were higher. And luckily I was able to do that, but did that because it was going to fulfill me more and fulfill how I worked. And it motivated much more. You get up in the morning excited, not because of the money you're going to make, because that's going to happen whether you're excited or not. It's those other things that motivate us to actually get up in the morning and do our jobs and be part of the team. So in summary, should a project manager become a Scrum Master? Well, let's look at your role and those roles and your career goals. What do you want to do? Where do you want to be? What do you like? Do you like managing status and managing progress? That's okay, and that's still needed. Or do you like being more engaged with the team and really being, I call them the soft skills. Good project managers have both, not all do, just like not all Scrum Masters have both. But do you really like those softer skills of helping people be successful and motivating people and working very closely with people to help them succeed and to help them come to decisions? Think back to that slide where I talked about the stances of the Scrum Master, the coach, the facilitator, the teacher, and so on. That role is very, very different and takes a different set of skills and a different personality, a different mentality. Not all of us are good at that, and that's okay. Be sure to understand the role and the accountabilities of that role before jumping in. Evaluate your abilities and look for ways to expand and grow over time. To me, there are many options for career growth, and don't be forced into something that doesn't fit just because we're changing and someone said, oh, well, you must be a project manager, so now you're a Scrum Master. It doesn't have to be the case. And most importantly, you need to enjoy what you're doing. Kind of going back to the Daniel Pink. We need to, if we're not enjoying it, you're going to be miserable. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to last. You're going to move on. And that's not fun. We've all been in those jobs. We've been in those jobs where it's not fun because of one thing or another. You've been thrown into something. And that's not cool. You want to be able to enjoy what you're doing. Let's see, we've got some more questions here. It makes more sense that a project manager to go toward the role of a product owner. More tasks you do as a project manager is the responsibility of the product owner, or is it more common for a project manager to become a Scrum Master? Great question. Again, that depends. And the big one to me, a product owner is responsible for ensuring that we're delivering value and interpreting what people want and need and communicating that. So do you have the ability to do that? A product owner is essentially an agile project manager, a product manager, sorry, not project, an agile product manager. They need to be able to turn off the part of their brain, if you will, that says, I'm going to solve your problem. And instead ask probing questions into understanding the problem. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, If I ask somebody about, I've got that blur on, so you don't really see it, but if I ask somebody what new app do you want on your phone? They probably can't answer that question. But if you start asking probing questions of, well, when you're using your phone, are there things that maybe you keep trying to do and you find difficult? Oh, tell me more. Why is that? How do you do it now? Those are what product owners are looking at. And those are what product owners are doing to be able to now document, ooh, people are having this problem. Let's document our goals. Let's document requirements that people have. And then turning off the other part of not trying to solve it, but working with the developers to solve the problem. As a good product owner, I talk about requirements, I talk about needs, I talk about value that we need to deliver back to the user. I don't talk about how we're going to solve it. So it really does depend a bit on your abilities and your desires of what you want to do. Great question. Sunil asks, managing scope, quality, and cost is the project manager's responsibility. Who owns this responsibility in Scrum projects? The Scrum team. The product owner owns the scope because they're defining the product goal and they're defining the requirements. The team works together to determine what they're going to deliver within a sprint based on the work that the product owner does with the developers. So there's the scope of the sprint, that 30 days or less. Quality is part of our definition of done. The organization may have a quality standard that goes into our definition of done, and the Scrum team may enhance that and go above that. But our definition of done is tied to the quality. Cost is an interesting one. How do we determine cost today? Usually wrong. So we can estimate, just like we do today. I've worked on very few products and projects that actually hit the time, budget, and capability metrics. I've worked on many that kept extending. So we can tell you what it's costing all along the way, and we should be capturing that. And we can capture that in our tooling, and we can predict that based off of history. And that's, if we're capturing that, it doesn't matter who's reporting it. And we're not really, we could say we're managing costs, but are we really managing costs? We're managing delivering value, and cost is one of those value metrics. If you look at something on the Scrum.org website called evidence-based management, we look at cost as one of many, many value factors. And we need to look at it as that. We should be measuring and looking at and growing value. Thank you, Sunil. Someone keeps asking about respect and pay. I don't know, be good at your job and you'll get more money and you'll get more respect. It has nothing to do with the role or the job title. As a matter of fact, I've seen some senior vice presidents and CEOs who have very little respect. They may get more pay, but they certainly have very little respect from their organizations. I worked at IBM. I've known some directors who had very little respect from their employees. So respect is earned, it's not a job title. And if anybody thinks that you should be respected because of your job title, you're wrong. You have to earn respect. And that's by being a good leader. It's by helping teams, helping people grow. Can you show a project team structure with a Scrum Master and a project manager, please? I don't have a slide on that today in this deck, so I don't know that I can show that, but the way I would envision it is you've got a Scrum team. I guess there's two ways. I've kind of talked about it. One, you have a Scrum team, and there may be a project manager that sits outside and comes to the team and asks the team questions, and comes to the sprint reviews and has access to the product backlog, and which is transparent, and they're reporting based on that, and they report into some part of the organization, and they're there to support and work with the Scrum team. The Scrum Master is a part of that team, and they're there to facilitate the success of the team. They're not there to manage status. They're not there to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do, because a team is going to hold each other accountable. The other view of that could be maybe we need project management on our team. And maybe that is one of our developer roles, although I would discourage that. We may split some of those needs across the team and have different people pick some of those up, and like writing reports and writing queries. And if we need to do that, we're going to determine how to do that as a team. I've seen projects without a project manager, but instead a Scrum Master, and timelines are missed. Bugs are created, developer is running the meeting. Seems like a mess. Is it? And whose responsibility is it to fix this? It's the Scrum Master's responsibility, Christine. Shouldn't the developer concentrate on the development and not get too involved in capacity, velocity, and building stories? So the stories are being built by the product owner potentially, but at the same time, they're working with the developers, because if the product owner is not working with the developers, they're building a pipe dream that maybe can't be realized. Working together with the developers instead of a product owner or product manager who's sitting out there, in their ivory tower, you end up delivering the wrong things and delivering or not being able to deliver what you need. The Scrum Master, if you're missing time, if you're missing timelines, creating bugs, and not having meetings happen, that's on the Scrum Master. They need to facilitate that, need to help that happen. If you get coming in with a lot of bugs, well, then you've got no definition of done, or not a clear definition of done. And the Scrum Master needs to facilitate the creation and ensure that we're attaining that definition of done. That a project manager is not going to be any different in making that happen. What are they going to come in and command and control and say, you must do this? Okay, great. All right, we did it. Now what? But we need to facilitate that and make that happen. And by working with and having, maybe you've been experienced some not so good Scrum Masters, which is very, very possible. But a good Scrum Master is going to make sure that these things happen, and working with the team to make sure they happen. So Cindy, no, I don't believe so. Cindy asks, is the project manager the enemy in the Scrum Agile process? Is PM being eliminated? I think I've said that a few times now. Like I said, many times I've seen project managers working with the Scrum team and not going away, and PMOs still existing even when teams are using Scrum. They're there to support the Scrum team, and work with the Scrum Master and the product owner and the developers to get what they need for the organization. They do need to understand how the Scrum team is working to help work together with them. But they certainly are not, they're not the enemy, and in no way, hopefully I didn't make it sound like that. But they are a different skill set, or can be a different skill set, and they may have different objectives, and that has to be appreciated. Who decides what has sufficient value to the customer to justify the cost of development? The product owner. The product owner is responsible, or is accountable, for delivering value and defining what that value is. So the product owner needs to understand this different stakeholders. They also need to understand, stakeholders that aren't customers, like the business. So maybe we can create this thing, and customers want this feature or this capability, and it'll cost us $2 to create, and they're only willing to pay $1 for it. Well, that's not going to solve anybody's, well, it might solve the customer's problem, but certainly not going to solve the company's problem. So they have to make those trade-offs and make those decisions. But the product owner is accountable for delivering value. You stated a Scrum Master steps in to fill gaps. So I'm not sure. I don't think I've said that. So I'm gonna let that one go, Marvin. If you have more to that question, please let me know. Amanda asks, in instances where a team would benefit from both a Scrum Master and a product owner, but resources, people, I'll say, are limited, do you recommend that the person takes on more of a PM or Scrum Master role? So, or is that dependent on the dynamics of the team? I think you answered your own question there, Amanda. I'm a business analyst that sometimes has to take on each of these roles, plus the PO role. Yep. So I'm trying to figure it out. And that's a great question, Amanda. I've seen a lot of really good Scrum teams where we have business analyst skills on the Scrum team, and the product owner is relying very heavily on those people to help them and help the team be successful. Like I said, as a team in general, we often are going to divide up the work and what work needs to get done. So if there are certain project management things that have to happen within the team, it doesn't have to be the Scrum Master. It doesn't have to be the product owner. If we're thin on people and we need to divide up that work, that's okay. And that actually, sometimes that works out better because we all have a bit of skin in the game. Rather than just one person doing everything, we all have a little bit of that, and we're all part of the team. We're all holding each other accountable for what we need to do. And often I see that work quite well. Just remember focus. The more things we have to focus on, the less we focus. So by ensuring that we are working in a way that helps us focus is also important. So Marvin asked, should the Scrum Master have various skills? Absolutely. The Scrum Master needs to be able to communicate. They need to be able to teach. They need to be able to coach. They need to be able to step back from a situation and remove themselves from the emotional parts of situations. There are lots and lots of skills that come in with being a Scrum Master. Do they have to be a developer? No. If I'm in a software organization, does a Scrum Master have to know how to code? Absolutely not. Some of the best Scrum Masters I know come out of project management world, were never developers, but have incredible people skills and incredible facilitation skills. And some of those folks, they couldn't write a line of code, for example, to save their life. But they garner the respect of their Scrum teams and work closely with those teams to make the whole team successful. So I'm not saying that the project management is evil in any way. Just different. That's all. Just different sets of skills. Absolutely, project management is valuable. Project management is important, and project management does not go away. So Winifred asks, if a Scrum Master is not providing updates, how can the project manager obtain it from the Scrum team? So there's many ways, and I don't know your exact situation, but if the Scrum Master doesn't have to be the one providing the updates, there's no reason the project manager can't work with them for that. Project manager should have access to all of the reporting. So that product backlog should be fully transparent and available so that the project manager can go right in at any time and see status of what's happening. So if you're using, for example, Jira, project manager should have absolute full access to everything that's happening in Jira to understand what's happening, run their reports, gather their information, see everything that they need. And if the Scrum Master is not allowing that, that's not a good Scrum Master, because part of what the Scrum Master needs to do is provide that transparency to the rest of the organization and ensure that the rest of the organization has everything they need to be successful. So Kelly asks, and I'll try to keep that short. Do you believe that someone with organizational authority over the team can be an effective Scrum Master, like a VP who everybody reports to? Often not. I'm not saying it can't happen, and I've seen examples where a manager can be a good Scrum Master, but often not, because there's a fear that happens. If if I'm the person who can make hiring and firing decisions, if I'm the person who can make decisions around pay and promotion, it makes it very hard for me to trust. It makes it really hard for their employees to trust everything that's happening and really be fully open and honest. Because if they're having a problem, they may not admit that they're struggling and they need help. They may. It depends on, of course, that relationship, but they may not. Hey, I'm not able to fulfill this because I really don't understand how X and Y go together. I'm willing to say that to someone as my teammate who's going to help me. Am I willing to say that to someone who's my boss, who may make a decision on my review? Maybe not. And those are two very different things and that need to be considered. So I want to be conscious of time. It looks like we have about a minute left. We've taken a lot of questions. I'm happy to answer others. You can contact me via email, or I can work to answer other questions um, via the email from the questions that were asked. I just want to take a second to say thank you. I know this is can be a tough subject. It's certainly difficult when we're talking this way and we're not actually having a conversation, but it's a typed conversation. But thank you very much, and please don't in any way ever take that project management is not needed, because it is a needed set of skills. It just may be a different set of skills than a Scrum Master.